Good afternoon and welcome to today's Spotlight webinar. We have a great presentation for you today, and I wanted to start by thanking you all for taking the time out of your busy day to attend and join us. We have an excellent panel of speakers presenting today. First up, we have Mike Nelson. Mike Nelson is the co-founder of 415 Digital, a digital growth agency dedicated to marketing for your business via search engine marketing. Our next fabulous presenter is going to be Tony Chop, who is the Claim Your Space founder, who has spent 10 plus years as a Google Ads expert, web analytics storyteller, and digital marketing strategist. Welcome and thank you both for participating. Lastly, my name is Jessica Michaels. I'm our resident Google guru and product coach here at Call Tracking Metrics, and I come with 10 years of experience in all things PPC and look forward to presenting to all of you today. So with that, welcome our presenters.
Hello.
Yes, welcome. One second. We have a great agenda for you today. I'm just making sure everyone's on mute. But before we begin, as a coach, I always like to start my webinars with a couple of exercises, just so that everyone gets to know the GoToWebinar control panel, and just make sure that we all are on the same page and that everyone can both hear and see me. So if you can hear me, will you raise your hand on the GoToWebinar control panel? All right, I don't see hands going up, so that's a little alarming. Maybe it's just a little delayed. Oh, here they go. Okay, so it looks like a majority of you can hear me, so I'm going to pull your hands down. And then if you can see our screen, which is the webinar agenda. Now there's a ton of hands going up. Okay, I think I might have just been a little delayed. Okay, so if you can see my screen, raise your hand again. All right, I see all the hands going up pretty much across the board. Perfect, excellent. Okay. So next, if you can find the question box, share with us something where you're dialing in from today and where you plan on vacationing this year. So the question box is really handy. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them in here. But just to make sure that we all know where it is, tell us a little something about yourself. And I'll give that just a few minutes to populate. So while those are coming in, we also have a handouts panel, and from there you can download the slide deck if you wanted to revisit that at a later time. Okay, I don't see any of the questions coming in. Tell me a little about yourself. Like I said, where you're dialing in from today and where you're going on vacation. Oh, here they're starting to come in. I want to go to Aruba today. Me too. I'm from Culver City, California, and I'll be visiting Denver and Alaska this summer. Awesome. Lucky you. Dialing in from a place where the sky is blue, little windy, North Carolina, and I'm learning about CTM integrations. Excellent. Welcome. Calling from Maryland. I love puppies and sunset walks on the beach. Okay. All right. Looks like it was a little delayed. Now they're coming in all over the place. So we have people dialing in from Toronto. Welcome. Dewey Beach. Oh, I'm jealous. San Francisco. And David from Cancun. No need for vacation. No joke. Well, welcome everyone. Somebody says Fiji sounds cool. Really excited to hear from Mr. Nelson. Oh, check that out. Already getting shout outs. Okay, great. Well, it looks like everyone is familiar with our question box. So again, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them in. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll have some Q&A. Okay, so today's webinar is going to be split into a few sections. We're going to start with revealing some really fun stats about how we're growing more and more obsessed with our phones, which will lead into identifying the conversion blind spot of phone call attribution. Then we'll interview some CTM advocates, being Mike and Tony, and we'll hear their story and how they've incorporated call tracking metrics into their everyday workflow and how they utilize CTM to optimize their campaigns, increase conversions, and lower their cost per acquisition. And like I said, lastly, we'll wrap up with some live Q&A. So again, feel free to enter questions at any time, and then we'll address them all at the end. And if you wanted to revisit this webinar or any other webinars that we've had recorded in the past, you can find those in our support hub. So let me real quick show you this. Here we go. So this is our support hub, and all of our recorded webinars can be found in here. And this one will be added to the list here of our spotlight webinars. So if you wanted to revisit it, I'll have this up by tomorrow at the latest. I'll try to get it up today. The last little thing I did want to mention before we begin is that we are located right out of Annapolis, Maryland, and there's going to be an air show happening right now. So if you hear any weird noises, don't be alarmed. There's going to be a Blue Angel show happening at the same time as this webinar. So I felt like it was worth giving you a little warning about that. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. Oh, actually, I wanted to start by polling our audience. So here we go. Just get a sense of who we have attending today. So how long have you been using CTM? Are you not a customer, less than 3 months, between 3 and 6 months, 6 months to a year, or over a year? Let's just get an idea of who we have here today. Okay, just going to give it another minute so that other people can make their selections. Unfortunately, on my end, it looks like this is coming in very delayed, but I think we have some results. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so it looks like we have 11% that are less than 3 months, 11% that are between 3 and 6, and 11 is very popular. And then 67% for over a year. Well, welcome to everyone. We're thrilled to have you. Also good to know we don't have any prospects. Okay, and then I thought it'd also be fun to start with some trivia. So the theme of today is kind of PPC, so I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of Google trivia. So what TV show was the first to use Google as a verb to Google something? Was it That 70s Show, The Big Bang Theory, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or Family Guy? I'll give you guys just a minute to cast your votes. Okay, Alex. Now there's nothing wrong with guessing the wrong answer. There's actually nothing good about getting the answer right, but bragging rights. All right, looks like the votes are in. Let's take a look. Okay, looks like 11% thought it was That 70s Show, 22% thought it was The Big Bang Theory, 44% said Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and 22% said Family Guy. Well, the majority is actually correct today. It was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Feel free to fact check me. And we'll do one other one before we begin. Here we go. So where did Google negotiate its acquisition of YouTube? Was it at Denny's over mozzarella sticks? Was it at the Macaroni Grill over spaghetti and meatballs? At Wild Wings over Chipotle and barbecue wings? Or Ruby Tuesdays over garlic bread? Give you guys just a minute. Okay. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, looks like 33% thought it was Wild Wings and 67% of us thought it was Ruby Tuesdays. It was actually at Denny's over mozzarella sticks, and it was in 2006. So that is our fun Google trivia for today. So with that, let's begin. Okay, so we are obsessed with our phones. So really no surprise here. Uh, Research shows that 94% of Americans have a cell phone, which means that 9 out of 10 people have a cell phone on them, ready to connect and communicate, and we take them everywhere we go. We spend roughly 16 hours of screen time a day, with an average of checking them 150 times per day. Another study conducted showed that 91% of Gen Ys take their phones with them to the bathroom and use them. I actually saw a meme that was that like a porta potty has replaced the phone booth. Anyways. Another fun fact is that we sleep with our phones. 68% of us have them next to us while we sleep. So I fall into this category, but I think it's worth noting that I use mine as an alarm clock. I'm not cuddling with my phone, just saying. We even experience phantom vibrations. 80% of people have experienced false vibrations. I can agree to this as well. This has often happened to me, and I can say it actually happens quite frequently. Okay, so I found some fun memes about our phones. So our phones are making us oblivious to the world around us. I'm not sure if this is a true meme, but we've all seen things like this happen. People walking into wells, walking into streets. 72% of people state that they will not be more than 5 feet away from their phones. I think we've all seen this famous kiss cam video. So research also found that consistent use of phones can be bad for relationships, especially when you're on the Jumbotron. And I think most of us will agree with this one. It's normally considered as rude behavior, especially when you're in the company of others. So while phones may be bad for relationships and sleep quality, they are great for marketers. With nearly 2 billion smartphone users, online marketing is now the same as mobile marketing. And the ease with which prospects can reach out to businesses is at an all-time high. The phone is a decision-making tool, with almost half of today's consumers using their phones to compare prices, browse product reviews as they shop. Mobile users are primed to purchase, and though significant attention is paid to online purchasing power of the smartphone, many marketers forget the fundamental function of these devices, which of course is to make phone calls. And yet, inbound calls remain a significant source of sales. Beyond sheer volume, leads generated by phone calls tend to be more valuable. 65% of businesses rank incoming calls as their source of their most qualified leads, with phone contacts bringing in 5 and 10 times the revenue as online contact forms. But while measuring online conversions has become a standard practice for most businesses, many companies have a complete blind spot surrounding their inbound phone calls. This conversion blind spot is particularly significant when you consider that calls drive 10 times more sales than clicks. For marketers, conversions are everything. You should be taking every metric into consideration to optimize your online campaigns, increasing conversion rates and lowering the overall cost per acquisition. Call tracking metrics uses the conversion building functionality of call intelligence to track phone calls, text messages, and form submissions to the source, landing page, and keyword searched, allowing marketers to compare the amount they're spending on each channel, ad, campaign, and keyword in conjunction with the time they spent on each call ratings, and revenue generated. The result is data-rich reporting that details accurate return from PPC advertising or any other marketing investment. For the last decade, marketers have been focused with all things online. In the race for clicks, though, many marketers have let phone calls fall off the radar. But with the explosion in smartphone ownership and the rise of mobile search, calls are more than part of your traditional marketing paradigm, they are critical. Not being able to attribute calls generated by online campaigns after the click takes place limits marketers by not showing the full effectiveness of their marketing efforts. It also means that the return on investment for advertising and marketing dollars isn't being accurately reflected. So unless they're accurately tracked, the value of phone calls will be unclear at best and grossly underestimated at worst. For example, imagine a marketing campaign that's driving significant revenue via inbound phone calls while yielding few online conversions. A business that isn't tracking and measuring those calls might decide to kill that campaign, cutting off an effective revenue stream simply because they didn't have enough information. Not only does call tracking and attribution provide a true holistic view of your conversions, it allows you to score and grade them. One thing I've always struggled with optimizing in Google Ads is the lack of grading or scoring. A form submission happens or a phone call took place, therefore it's a conversion. As marketers, we know that this isn't always the case, and it's dangerous to optimize our campaigns blindly. So here's my true life use case. About 4 years ago, we released our soft phone, and I was creating a new campaign in what was at the time AdWords for it. Um, and once it was live, within the first hour, we received about 100 phone calls from that campaign, which sounds awesome. And if I was viewing that report in Google Ads, this would have been a dynamite campaign, probably one of the best ones I've ever run. Until I checked the call log, and our sales team had utilized our call scoring feature, and to my disappointment, all the calls were scored with 1 star and reported that the callers were looking for a Skype type of service, which is not how our soft phone works. So if I had optimized my campaigns solely based on the data that Google provided, I would have continued to dump money into campaign and keywords that weren't representing the software we provided. The use of call scoring can really impact how we report conversions in Google Ads. And what's even cooler is that we can automate and qualify which activities, calls, texts, and forms we send into Google Ads as conversions. And then from there, we can attribute actual sale revenue, which helps marketers really or make really informed optimization on keywords that are truly driving sales and qualified leads. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our guest presenters today, Mike and Tony, who are going to be sharing their true life stories. So with that, welcome.
Thank you, Jessica. Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Chop. I've been running Google Ads campaigns for a little over a decade now, and I really sort of pride myself on having an analytical approach to everything that we do. I call myself a web analytics storyteller because we try to align website analytics with our clients' goals. And interestingly for us, using a platform like call tracking metrics has been absolutely instrumental in being able to create these stories that help us understand how to make marketing investments and quantify the value of paid search, particularly. The next slide is Mike too. Can you go to the next slide for me, please, Jessica? So what we do and why we do it at Claim Your Space. So a big part of everything for us with all of our client interactions is proving the value of not only the channel paid search, but also of our work as an agency. And tools like call tracking metrics are instrumental. And then one of the other things that I wanted to touch on during this webinar is the flexibility of the reporting that we can get out of call tracking metrics. And it's connecting back to what Jessica was talking about in call tracking metrics' ability to score calls and also report them as conversions or not. We can use the filtering in call tracking metrics to dive down into this subset group of conversions or positive conversions and really look at it and again report back to our clients. And ultimately this all dovetails up into measurements that matter, and being able to develop conversion reporting further down the marketing funnel really makes sense to us and makes sense to our clients. So, and I want to give you a couple concrete examples after Mike introduces himself here about how we've actually used call tracking metrics, scoring, and conversion reporting on a particular project. So that's it for my little intro, Jessica.
Great, welcome, and thank you for participating. And with that, welcome, Mike.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. I am from 415 Digital. So we're a growth agency based out of San Francisco, California. We work a lot on Google Ads, Facebook, pretty much all things growth, and we've been partnering with call tracking metrics for over a year now using their platform. We've used 3 or 4 others, and we really do like CTM for a lot of the reasons that Tony explained. It's definitely our go-to option. Just a little bit more about us before we talk about CTM. Again, we're in San Francisco. There's probably $10 to $15 million a month in management that we're spending right now. So we think that accurate data is extremely important, and we're going to talk about that importance quite a bit in the rest of this presentation. So I want to go to the next slide. There's a couple more small notes on CTM and why we use it. I think a big theme for pretty much any business, whether it's lead generation or e-commerce, is having a source of truth. As a marketer, I've heard people say source of truth over and over again for the last decade. And really, it's just been the last couple of years where the data quality is such that we can have a source of truth. So when we choose to use CTM, we're really using it as that source of truth, which is very nice for reconciliation purposes, also communicating with clients, making sure performance is sort of on par, and really just avoiding confusion, particularly amongst executive levels and things like that. I was so used to hearing like, why does this number not match this number, not match this number? With CTM, though, we can use that as a data hub and sort of export all of that information to all the Google properties. Next thing that we think is really important as it pertains to call tracking, whether it's CTM or another vendor, although CTM sort of wins in this area as well, is just the ease of ability to audit calls. Again, we're going to talk a lot about data. We have been talking about data, but we also still need to manually listen to calls. There's so many findings and learnings and things like that. So accessing those call reports in CTMs is very important, and it is part of our process. You know, we don't listen to every single call, but we'll have somebody on the team listen to 20 or 30% of the calls just to make sure there's not anything misleading in the metrics. Sometimes, but not always, the call scoring can be incorrect or needs to be adjusted. Call duration could be long for a bad reason. Maybe there's some other optimization. So the ease of listening to the calls is, again, it's very simple on CTM. And then lastly, a reason why we use CTM is simple integration. I think that there are a lot of options and features and functions within CTM, which is all the stuff that we need as marketers, but the actual integration process is really, really easy. I also like about CTM, small notes, and I don't 100% know why this is, but other solutions sort of, you'll see the phone number flash and change, and it's sort of a quick flicker there. With CTM, it's going to show up right away, so you don't have that annoying sort of user experience with this easy integration. So that is a quick overview.
Awesome, thank you. So I think Tony's taken over here, right?
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So I'm just going to kind of go off the poll here. A bunch of you guys said that you've used CTM for a long time. So I'm assuming that a lot of people are pretty familiar with the platform, but I want to show you how we use it with a particular project. I should have drawn an arrow on this slide because it's super small and annoying, and I'm sorry for that. But the second column over from the left is conversion rate. So, and what we've done with CTM in this particular project is we've actually worked with this client's call center to get them to interact with the CTM platform and mark a little checkbox in the CTM platform that's called converted. And I'm going to show it to you in another slide. But ultimately, what that ends up with is a super simple table like this that shows us conversion rate by marketing channel. Okay, so again, super small. It's really hard to see, but it's what we're demonstrating to this client out of this report is that the conversion rate for not just a phone call or a web form fill, but to an appointment out of Google Ads is about 30%. In fact, it's double the average conversion rate of all their other marketing channels combined. So as a PPC agency, this is kind of like a hallelujah moment where we're able to go back to our client and say, you know, look at the effectiveness of your pay-per-click advertising. So that being said, I want to just kind of go on, Jessica, if you can go on to the next slide here. I want to show you how we actually executed this. So this is in the CTM platform, and this is actually if you click into an individual call on the scoring tab. So again, I'm assuming that some of you are familiar with this, but maybe not this actual button right here. And this button for me is like the holy grail. And what this button actually does is it'll throw an event into Google Analytics called call sale. So it's a unique event. There's a bunch of events that get thrown into Google Analytics from call tracking metrics, but this one is special. So, so in this case, these guys are, the client that we're talking about here is a regional business based in Southern California, and the whole purpose of their marketing is to drive an appointment. So we worked with their call center and we got them to tick this box if they book an appointment during a phone call. Okay, and from here, if you can actually go to the next slide, please. So from here, we pick up that event in Google Analytics. So we set up a goal for it, and it's called the appointment booked goal. And all we're doing is picking up this event. It's a category, and the actual label of the event category is called call sale. It's just like that. So, and if you want to go over to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is what the, you know what, sorry, let me pause for just a second. This is a little bit of a jump here. So those last two slides are about how this actually gets set up in Google Analytics. And actually the first slide that I showed you the reporting that is the result of that. Yeah, right, so that conversion rate column there is the result of this action being taken in CTM. Yep, cool. Okay, so now, but the topic of the webinar is conversion rate blind spot. So this is all really well and good for phone calls, but with this project, we wanted to take it a step further, actually 2 steps further, because these guys don't just take phone calls. They also take web form fills, and they also they have a lot of conversations on their website with live chat. So we got to thinking about this. Well, how can we get these additional interaction points in the CTM? And so for form fills, it's pretty straightforward. Call Tracking Metrics has a piece of technology called their form reactor. And depending on the platform that your website is on, it can be a relatively easy setup process. So in this case, we got off easy. Our client is using a WordPress website, and there's a plugin for WordPress for call tracking metrics. And they're also using Gravity Forms for the forms on the website. And the call tracking metrics WordPress plugin natively interacts with Gravity Forms. So the end result is what you're seeing here. So when somebody fills out a form on the website, we get all of this magical data. Number one, we get the source that it came from Google AdWords. And then also we can see a keyword search that they did. And I'm actually referring to the second one down, Jessica, but it's okay. Either one's fine. So we can see the keyword data that the actual user searched for, and we can see the campaign that it came from out of Google Ads. And then ultimately, this follows the same logic as the phone calls do. The call center scores this call and marks it as converted. So all of the forms that come in from Google Ads are getting attributed correctly, and we're essentially getting credit for them, I think is the easiest way to say it. So that was awesome. And then the next step that we did is say, well, listen, we're doing the same thing with live chats, right? So in this case, these guys use a live chat platform called Live Chat Inc., which fortunately has a nice hook with Zapier. I'm assuming most everybody's familiar with Zapier these days. It's a great way to wire stuff together. And essentially what we did is we created a Zap that took the data from Live Chat Inc. and pushed it into call tracking metrics. So you can see here's an example of a chat that came in. It was a result of a Google Ads click. And again, we can see the keyword that was searched and the campaign that it came from. So now what we have is a system where all of the data, to Mike's point, single source of truth, all of the incoming leads that are being generated from Google Ads are getting captured in CTM. all of these leads are following the same process that for scoring that allows us to calculate a conversion rate to appointment. And then we can start to do some of these comparisons across channels as well, right? So we can talk about how does paid search compare to organic search, for example, or how does email marketing fit into the puzzle, or what about those Facebook ads we bought? So this framework has really worked well for this project. Let's go on to the next slide here. Okay, so, and then ultimately what we're also doing with that conversion event, right? So if you picture that Google Analytics slide where we set up the goal for the appointment booking, well, now we're importing that goal into Google Ads from Google Analytics. So, you know, in this case, for this particular project, we're measuring tons of different conversions. We want to measure live chat. We want to measure phone calls. We want to measure everything because we want to use Google's bid automation for targeting a CPA. But there, out of those 6 or 8 conversions that we measure, there's certainly one that's the most important. And in this case, it's an appointment. So, and this is one particular campaign with the different various conversions segmented out so we can see them. And we can really quickly look at this and get a sense about how many appointments are being booked out of this campaign and at what cost per appointment. And that's kind of that was a really important thing for us to be able to go back to this client and say, listen, we're talking about cost per appointment, not cost per lead. And then there's another column over there for conversion value. So we're doing some proxy math there. We're saying we know as a percentage how many appointments show up, and we know as a percentage how many of them convert to a paying customer, and then how many of them convert to, and then what the average value for a paying customer is. So we can actually get, again, this is a napkin math, but we can get a proxy for a return on ad spend from AdWords. So this has been a lot of fun work for us to be able to get to these things for lead gen projects. For those of you in e-commerce, like this stuff is a lot of this is more available to you, but in lead generation, this can be a little bit tougher to get to, and it's all built on CTM. And by the way, for the record, I'm always kind of throwing shade at some of the other call tracking vendors, and I won't name any names, but when we did our, like Mike, we've used a bunch of the different platforms. But 2 or 3 years ago, when we really started leaning into this more, Call Tracking Metrics was the only one that gave us that unique Google Analytics event for conversion. And as you can see, we've used that idea to wire up everything else. Okay, next slide, please. And lastly, I just wanted to show this off because this is one of my favorite things to do in Call Tracking Metrics. I build these filters. So you can see I have a filter here that's looking for all the calls and web and forums and live chats from AdWords for the current month. And you can save these filters, and then you can also share these filters with other CTM users. So just another thing that makes Call Tracking Metrics a great tool for us, but also a great tool for us to share information amongst the other people that are stakeholders in various projects. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Tony. So I'm going to kind of just continue the story here with sort of a scenario where somebody like Tony has set up really good data, and the data is being imported into Google Ads. So if we move to the next slide, we kind of start, you know, speaking to how we're going to use all this really high quality data. I would say before jumping into this, just kind of going over the timeline of Google Ads. 10 years ago when I was on the platform, again, the data quality wasn't as good, machine learning wasn't as good. So when we would talk about tracking and setup, there wasn't a document, there wasn't a plan, there wasn't a strategy. We just kind of went in there, set up some basic tracking, and then move forward. Nowadays, as a professional at this, without exaggeration, I can say we spend 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks just setting up the data for each and every single client before we even start trafficking things. So that's how important the data is. And the reason why it's so important is because of the advent of machine learning. And this is going to be, you know, the case for any major platform, whether it's Bing Ads or Google Ads or Facebook. They're doing more and more bid automation. So they categorize that in smart bidding as smart bidding. And there's a few options. There's target CPA, target ROAS, maximize conversions. There's also a bunch of other options that Google's coming out with, like maximize conversion value and a few other ones. They're even putting warnings in when you're not using these smart bidding options. They're sort of saying, hey, your performance is going to be worse, et cetera, et cetera. And I can tell you almost 100% they are correct, provided that the data that you're getting from your data vendor like CTM is accurate. So if you have accurate data, I can say almost definitively that you want to use something like Target CPA. So if you're not familiar with Target CPA, here's how you enable it, at least in the Google Ads UI. It's part of setting under bidding, and then there's a bunch of other smart bidding options as well, like I just mentioned. So again, once you've got somebody like 415 or Tony or in-house who's set up all of the data to be accurate, it's piped into Google. Now we're going to start using it by moving over to smart bidding. So that's it for this slide. One of the reasons why I think smart bidding is better than manual bidding is because of all of the things that Google takes into an account. So here is a list. There's device, physical location, intent, time of day, browser, operating system, etc. So these are all the things that Google is looking at in addition to keyword or query like you're able to do with manual bidding. And they're using all these influencers to make a bid decision. You may see in the UI that you can, if on manual bidding, make some sort of adjustments, like you can bid, devices up or down. You can definitely make more campaigns with different locations. There's modifiers for locations, etc. But this is just such a large list of things. It's very difficult as a person to take into all of these accounts, take all of these things into account. In fact, Google doesn't even give you the opportunity to make bid modifiers for all of these things in their UI. For example, you can look high and low for browser settings on Google, or which browser the user is using, but they don't give you any options to exclude or bid modify. So the only option that you would have to make a bid adjustment based on browser or OS or a bunch of other things is actually using smart bidding. So not only is it able to process more data compared to manual bidding, but it's looking at more things that are even possible when compared to manual bidding. So this is part of the argument as to why you should use something like smart bidding or TCPA, again, provided that you have really good and accurate data from CTM. Okay. So a little bit about how I set up conversion tracking, and I'm curious to see if this matches with Tony, but he went over sort of going and checking and saying, okay, we're going to track appointments, and that's going to be our main conversion event. But if you see in his date range, I think it was 60 days and there was only 24 conversions. So if you have that as the only conversion event, that may not be enough data for something like a human being to make manual bidding decisions, and definitely not a machine to make bidding decisions as well. So we still need to import proxy leads and conversions into Google Analytics. Google Analytics and then into Google Ads, they end up being leads. So what is the strategy for importing leads? Well, the strategy currently is importing things that are roughly of equal value. So when I say equal value, you need to kind of do some analysis and say, hey, a text message, 10% of the time that turns into a customer, but a 35-second phone call, that's where the 10% break-even point is as well. So text message and a 35-second phone call, these are equivalent events. I'm going to pipe both of these into Google Ads so that it has enough conversion events to make bidding decisions, because we don't have enough based solely on appointments. So again, just to recap, since that was a little bit convoluted, if you don't have enough appointments, the valuable thing happening over a date range, you need to give Google more data. So the more data needs to be leads, and the leads that you pipe in have to be equal value across text, phone calls, calls from ads, chats, etc. Because currently Google cannot optimize individually to these events. It can just optimize to conversions. So that is a really important strategy, is kind of normalizing the value of your leads so that Google is kind of agnostic. Well, since Google is agnostic, any one is worth the same value to you. So that is a big downside to Google. Like, we wish that we could tell Google that this thing is worth more than this thing. We can by putting in a conversion value, but it doesn't necessarily take that value into account, because again, it's just trying to hit a target CPA. But soon Google is going to be changing that so that we can have different conversion values for each event. So if we go back a few slides, 3 or 4 slides, to the list of events in the future, what I believe we're going to be able to do, this is still in beta, is tell Google, yeah, that one there. Hey, a live chat is worth $1,000. Appointment book is worth $300. Optimize simultaneously to all of these different target CPAs, and that will roll up more nicely into the overall performance. So that is a big change that Google is in the process of making, and we're really excited about that because it's going to make the need to normalize conversion value across events a lot less. We're going to be able to put specific values in there. That is, I would say, the other half of, what do we do with the data once it's in Google? That's kind of the approach there. So, Tony, I don't know if you want to add anything or, debate me a little bit on the importance of normalizing or things like that. But that's roughly how we sort of handle the data once it's in there.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is we have like a threshold that we use that we need to have at least 50 conversions per month before we can start getting into target CPA. So exactly to your point, if you have like a high value conversion that doesn't have enough conversions, then what we like to do is add more conversions in there. Typically, we add as many conversions as we can just to feed that target CPA model. And then also to your point, we're equally excited about being able to essentially tell the target CPA model, hey, focus on this one, but take these others as, what do you want to say, additional factors? Because that's exactly how we think about it.
Yeah, so, again, hopefully kind of walking through this, everybody sees the importance of, data strategy, conversion tracking strategy. Again, if 7 years ago, someone walked up to me and they said, hey, I'm managing a Google Ads account, I want to talk about the conversion tracking strategy, I would be like, what is that? That doesn't even make any sense. But now it's such an important aspect of what we do. We literally sit there and document out the pros and cons. There's a bunch of process that needs to go into place. Like Tony said earlier, the sales team needs to go in and mark a conversion as such or an appointment as such. So this is a really important aspect of just running successful marketing campaigns. And in fact, we would say it's probably the most important thing right now, since we have such a heavy dependency on machine learning and TCPA and bidding automation. So anyways, I think that's the last slide I had there, and hopefully that quick story or sort of overview of how we run the data side of Google Ads was helpful.
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you both. Very insightful. So at this point, I would encourage everyone to start with some questions, start entering those in, and then I'm going to give you a little sneak preview into something that Call Tracking Metrics will be releasing in the near future. So again, start to enter your questions, and then so what we have coming soon, and I'm really excited to present this little teaser, is that we are in the process of making a new integration with Google Ads, which would be a direct API integration. And I really think that this is going to be a complete game changer. One of the things that we've realized over the years is that not all ads users are analytics users and vice versa. So with our current setup, everything funnels through analytics into Google Ads. With the direct Google Ads integration, it's going to be direct from CTM to Google Ads. And what we're going to be able to do is offer this to you at the agency level. So in Call Tracking Metrics, we have our parent account and our sub-accounts. Just like in Google Ads with their MCC, they have a parent and child structure. So with this new integration, what we're going to be able to do is at the agency level, you can connect CTM to your MCC account, and then we'll be able to auto-recognize the accounts in your MCC to the sub-accounts in Call Tracking Metrics, and then link those. And then, of course, if we weren't able to automate it, you could manually assign it. So with this integration, there won't be a need to create goals and analytics and import them into ads. We'll be able to automate and create the conversion actions right inside of the CTM platform. And from there, you can also set up the requirements. So now how you have to go into Google Analytics and create a goal, and from there you set the parameters for your conversion. Now all of that will be handled right inside of Call Tracking Metrics. So with our system, you can automate all of it. We'll even create the conversion action name for you so that it'll just be a seamless mapping. And then you can fine tune your conversions with the use of triggers. And of course, you'll be able to attribute revenue to those conversions as well. So what's exciting about this too is this isn't going to be just for click to landing pages. This will also be for our ad extensions and call only ads. So it's just going to be seamless and real easy. And again, you won't have to go into analytics, but of course that integration isn't going to go away. So we'll also have direct insights for your ad campaigns. We'll be able to identify and alert you if you have target numbers on your landing pages that we're not currently swapping for. So we're going to help you optimize and make sure that it's working the way that you intend it to. And we'll also be able to identify and alert you if you've created new landing pages and our script isn't running on them. So what Google's Ads is going to be doing is it's going to be pumping information into our system that we're then going to be providing insights for you. So it's going to be awesome. So the goal of this is to provide marketers with a seamless, easy, and powerful way to attribute activities as conversions. So stay tuned to our newsletter for release announcements, but it should be coming pretty soon. So with that, just want to do a little conclusion. So by integrating Google, Facebook, and Microsoft with call tracking metrics, call tracking, our ROI reports, and other functionality, marketers can truly see the entire length of their sales funnel. The result is more data-driven marketing strategy that creates better leads, more conversions, and higher revenue. So with that, let's have the questions. Now, I did see some coming in. Let me see. Somebody said, can you give a little more clarity or coming soon about it, like 1 month from now, second quarter, third quarter? So yeah, I know I try to be vague with these things because I don't want to make promises. I can say I've seen it. We're working out kinks. We really want it to be robust. So we're hoping, I try to be careful with these. I would say we might roll it out in different phases. If we do it in like maybe a 3-phase rollout, the first one would probably be midsummer. So very soon. The more hype we can get about makeup for it, I think the faster it'll come along. So great question. And I'm sorry, I try to be vague because I don't want to make promises. In the software world, we plan on everything being delivered tomorrow. It's just, that's not always how it goes. But great question. Let's see, any other questions for our presenters in regards to what they spoke about? They both shared very interesting use cases. And I love how they touched on really all of it, from forms to the reports to filters to inside of Google. So okay. And one other thing that I wanted to point out is, even though we kind of highlight all the paid search engines, like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, call tracking goes really far beyond that. It can even be organic sources. We have lots of SEOs that, they deserve their representation. Even print, TV ads. We actually have a client that does billboard advertising, and they're generating a ton of business from it. And, if they weren't doing the call tracking, how would they know that, it's driving all of those calls and revenue?
Yeah, I think just sort of hearing you talk about that, it's still a bit of an emerging trend. And again, interested to hear if Tony sort of feels the same way. But a lot of times we think of call tracking in the context of a lead gen client. But we work with some sort of higher price point B2C e-commerce clients as well. And what we're thinking about, and again, haven't acted on it entirely yet, is taking inbound calls for folks like that and really getting that into the data story, because Google and Facebook and pretty much everybody out there is saying, there's 20 or 30 or 40 touch points happening now before a lot of purchases are happening. People are looking for reviews, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly you couldn't sort of take a bunch of inbound calls for maybe like a $10 item, but for e-commerce folks that are selling things that are 200 or 300 and have potentially a high LTV because there's a lot of subsequent purchases, we're starting to advocate for call tracking and lead generation as a strategy for them. So we'll see just how pervasive the importance of these inbound calls becomes, but I can only see it being more and more important as time goes on.
Yeah, I can agree to that. Okay, so we did get some questions. So we had one that came in and it says, how do you convince clients who seem to be on edge and not wanting to set up call tracking in the first place? I think all three of us could answer that. One of the,
Yeah.
I'll just throw out some stats from the beginning that there's just so many that calls bring in 10 times more revenue than form submissions. That 65% of businesses rank incoming calls as their source of their most qualified leads. So think of like when we say conversion blind spot, that is a huge blind spot. And how are you going to optimize that if you don't know what's generating those?
Yeah, I mean, if it was for example, for a lead gen client, I think we would just tell them that we're not going to be able to work together, unfortunately, because we're not able to do our jobs without proper data, at least not able to do our jobs the way that we want to. So that would be a quick conversation.
Yeah, and we know there's always going to be people that this is something new and scary, but it's kind of why we started talking about how people are obsessed with their phones, because it's not even like a growing trend anymore. It's the norm. Like everyone is doing everything on their phones. So I would say it's really a high priority.
Yeah,
Is
and
that
to add, sorry, Jessica, not
go
to
ahead.
interrupt you, but just to add to that, we definitely have encountered that. We always just address individual concerns one at a time. Like we've gotten hit with the call recording being an issue for some clients. We just let them know we can turn that off. But really, the way that we sell it through, to Mike's point, we're not going to proceed without it, but we sell it through with just like, look at what we can do. I mean, look at what we can ultimately get to as a result of this tactic. And I find that most of our projects are really enthusiastic about it once we're done, kind of encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think definitely exaggerating there in terms of a quick conversation, but that's just sort of emphasizing how important it would be. But we found the same thing. Any concerns, there's usually a feature or a setting or something that can be done to sort of work through those. And those concerns are also another reason why sometimes it can take several weeks to have the data infrastructure sort of set up and piping into the right places. So if a client is sort of nervous about integrating call tracking metrics, there might be a week or two of discussion and sort of education, and then a few weeks of integration. But the reason I keep bringing that up is just to point out that it is worth it to go through that time and get that data right before trafficking media.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do here, because we hear this all the time too, is we recommend people just to try it out with maybe one campaign first. You don't have to go full blown, let's track all of our sources, although we encourage that. But I think the results in the end will really speak for themselves. So if people are on edge, just try to get them, convinced to do maybe one campaign, and then measure that and attribute that. And I think that the results from a test will convince them. So kind of let the data do the talking.
I like that you mentioned that too. We have different clients who are sort of partially on call tracking and they won't, for example, put organic calls on or GMP calls or things like that because they're worried about the very low cost of CTM. Like in my view, I would say, I mean, obviously everything is unique and sort of needs to be argued, but if you were just to ask me, hey, should I invest more in tracking everything? It would be no question. Absolutely everything should be tracked. Like it almost doesn't matter how much it costs because that's the value of having all the data in one place in this multi-channel world. So kind of riffing off of what you said, there is still a roadmap there of rolling it out more and more. So not all of our clients are tracking all the sources. So 415, we're still constantly reminding them, hey, you should put the other channels on. This is why. And we don't even have anything to do with the other channels. So it's just super critical to get all this stuff in one ecosystem. so that each individual platform has the data correct. And then furthermore, you as a media buyer, marketing manager can also look at that higher level view across all the channels appropriately, like Tony showed in his slide.
Great. So we did get some more questions that came in, and I think this one would be more directed to probably both of you. It's asking if you could give some more insight about the purpose of a target CPA.
Yeah, let me hit it. I have a pretty clear philosophy. Target CPA works really great given the right context. So again, we have a threshold that we want a minimum of 50 conversions in the previous 30 days. So we always set campaigns up. We used to always set them up manually bidded, but now we're starting to use max clicks, always with a cap on it. So my recommendation would not be to set max clicks uncapped. But we do a little keyword research. We start with max clicks. We set a cap on it. We look for 50 conversions per month. And then if that CPA target is within what we want it to be for the rest of our models, we just turn on target CPA. And then the purpose of it is that I'm doing things fundamentally different from the way I used to do them 5 years ago. These target CPA campaigns that have a lot of good data flowing through them, we start to add broad match keywords in there. And instead of just using exact and phrase and broad match modified, we'll go broad match. And it'll require a little bit of trimming with negative keywords, but it's working really good. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, I think the chances are very, very high that Google will hit the CPA that you ask it to hit. It's pretty sensitive to that and really trying to hit your goals in order to keep you as an advertiser long term. So there's other things that Tony said. I mean, we still go with manual CPC to start off and kind of see the data, but I think either strategy is appropriate. And it's a short-term thing, that beginning learning phase. You just need, again, I don't know the exact threshold, but it's 20, 30 conversions, and then you can flip over to TCPA. We use it a lot because it does what we ask it to do, and it also frees up our time to do everything else that we need to do. So there are so many more things that we have to do in 2019 that we didn't have to do a long time ago. Data integrity, data reconciliation, more time for creative, more time to explore GDN, which TCPA works very well on GDN as well. YouTube conversion. There's just sort of a laundry list of things to do in our job as a SEM account manager, just like everybody's job. So being able to kind of hand over the responsibility of bidding to Google, which we know almost definitively is going to hit the goal we give it, really just frees us up to do all of the important things outside of bidding. Like Tony, we always use broad match. We find we're always looking for negatives, but we don't usually find the need to apply them. This is all related because the matches are so good, by the way, that's why we don't apply them. And this is all related to another trend in Google, which is that in the last few years, things have become more audience centric. So Google is taking care simultaneously of who you are as a user, and then also what you're searching for when you're on TCPA. And the who you are is just so critical. And we as humans we don't have that data. Google doesn't even give us that data. So we need to depend on that data from Google to make those bid adjustments.
Yeah, thank you. Those were great answers. We have a few more that I think is worth talking about. Someone asks, are there any automated ways to trigger the converted option under scoring that we were speaking about, or must it be manual by the user? So yes. There are multiple ways that we can automate this. We can do it with post-call scoring with the use of cues, where it would actually prompt the agent to press 1 if the call converted, and then they'd use their keypad to enter in the scored amount. So that would be just from their phone. But there's different ways that we can automate it. It could be based on keywords spoken. With the use of our triggers, we can really automate just about anything. It's just a matter of how you want to approach it. So we can absolutely do that. Let's see. So someone says, I really love how Google Ads is going to release custom conversion values to optimize for CPA. I heard that too on Google Marketing Live webinar last week. I was there too. That was awesome. That is the main reason I kept using manual bidding. Do you know if we can apply for the beta program, or do you have any information on when that will be released? A phone call is much more powerful than a 120-second session. Will CTM allow us to integrate with this new feature? Ooh, so that's a great question. We should be able to integrate with the new features. Now, as far as, let me go back. Do you know if we can apply for the beta program? Are you referencing the beta program for the conversion?
I think
Because
that's the Google beta, the selected target CPA bidding.
Yeah, during the marketing live, I'm pretty sure they said just ask your Google rep and they'll be able to get you into the betas. So
Yeah,
I
so
think
just
it's,
quickly, just as we're running out of time, our experience has been very difficult to get in that beta. We've applied many times and I don't think we've ever gotten accepted. And I think that there's also a couple variations that are happening. I think that there's individual conversions having different values as a beta. And then there's the thing that was being talked about in Marketing Live, which is just saying, hey, for this campaign, go after this event. For this other campaign, go after this other event. So I think to set expectations, this is going to be a roadmap. It's going to keep sort of evolving as time goes on. So it's important that the data strategy evolve as well, including sort of making use of what we have today. Because we can really get by pretty well if you think through your events from beginning to end with what we have today, although certainly the new stuff is going to be improvements. So I would say using manual bidding because not happy with what we have today, you might want to look at the data that you're putting in there and reevaluate that, and then try TCPA with just a better sort of data and tracking strategy for today's feature set.
great. Yeah, and being time conscious, I think this is a great time to wrap up. So again, huge thanks to both of you, Tony and Mike, for participating and for providing such valuable insight into how you guys are using call tracking metrics in your own marketing strategies. I personally found that very informative. I'm sure all of our listeners did as well. And thank you everyone who has attended. There were a few questions we didn't get to. We can answer those offline, so we'll follow up with you. There is a short survey after the webinar, just asking a few simple questions. We take all feedback into consideration, so please fill that out. And with that, have a fantastic rest of your day and week and so forth. So with that, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks, everybody.